Hello and welcome to Power Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network where we reflect on Wildbow's most unfinished work as it releases. I'm, what was my name again? Oh, Ruben Morehouse, that's right.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
What was the pause there? You're right?
I was trying to think of something funny and I didn't.
That's tragic. We'll edit that out. Cut this all out. Cut it all out. But yeah, we're coming at you live in the Discord. So if you heard that, that means you're live. Congratulations. If you didn't hear that, you're watching it later. That's a mistake. You should come join us live in the Discord, because where else will you get to hear us almost start the podcast and Elliot disappears for 5 minutes and then we begin?
Sorry, there were cat escapades.
I said to chat, I bet it's cat related.
Yeah. So I guess this is your first one back from Hawaii, Ruben. You got a bit of an extra holiday.
Yeah, I stayed in Hawaii for an extra 2 weeks, just hanging out. It was pretty good. Yeah, good times.
I wish. I wish that was me. Actually, I don't wish you did that. I wish I did that.
Yeah. No. Yeah. You know. Okay. As is tradition, we have to start with Hawaii chat for about an hour in this podcast now before we start. And a great intro questions is it? Did we buy a timeshare? Almost is the answer. Almost a few times.
Yeah, I did tell that story. I think in one of the episodes. Yeah, we got close. Unfortunately, close.
Yeah,
but soberer heads prevailed, and your girlfriend got us out of there.
Yes. Thank you, Penny. So what are we doing on this? It's been so long, I don't even know how to do this, like, what do we even do? Podcasts, huh? They're great fun. Should we get into it?
We got to get through this one quick, because I got to go out to that farm after this episode.
Yes. Sorry, I forgot. In the Hawaii chat section, we have to talk about how you're going to try and find the only place in Australia that makes pog juice, and the farm that does it has an open day today for some reason.
Yeah, I got back here and I was like, how do I get pog in Australia? There's only one place that makes it, but it's out of stock everywhere. And I was like, where? Yeah, the farm's only an hour away from me. And then, like, when I went to their website, they're having an open day, today. And this was like 2 weeks ago. I was like, well, that's a sign from God that he wants me to get the pog. So I'm going to go get the pog.
Elliot, don't you know the only way to get POG here in Australia is by subscribing to Duff Media on Twitch? If you want to see Scott do some World of Warcraft raids or whatever he's been doing lately, that's the place to go. Now let's talk about Pale, shall we?
Yeah, definitely. Let's change the topic.
So we're here to talk about Finish Off 24.6. It's one of the best chapters because it's a Lucy chapter, and Lucy is, as we all know, well, I can't say that anymore, but you all know what I'm thinking. So yeah, it starts with Lucy overhearing the gunshot that ended the previous chapter and watches as things start to really pop off.
Yeah, and this is a really fun start to the chapter, because the first paragraph is basically explaining to us how, Lucy of all people, even with her implement, can't really figure out what sound she's hearing. Like, this is just right from the get-go. This chapter is like, shit is so chaotic and so overwhelming that even Lucy doesn't know what the sounds are anymore. And that's like her whole thing, is Lucy listens. She knows what's going on. Even last week in 24.5, I think we saw her through the storm hear a boogeyman sneaking up behind her in a forest. Like, she's been fine till now, and then this chapter starts and it's just like, this shit is crazy. And I mean, that's what this whole chapter is. This chapter is just chaos.
It could be the chaos, or let me pitch you on an alternate theory. I think one of the others has secretly made Lucy forget what gunshots sound like, because at this one and in the one later, she's like, oh, I can't even process what this sound is. So that's my fan theory, that there's an other around that's secretly eating Lucy's understanding of gunshot noises.
Yeah, either that or it could be all the other shit happening both times. Because isn't the other one when she's like, her back has been broken?
No, it's there's later in this, when Deb gets shot, that she has this exact same thing. She's like, her brain couldn't even process. I can't remember the exact quote, but
yeah,
it's effectively the same. It's the chaotic vibes of the fight and the gunshot just being such a piercing bolt through that it's kind of hard to even contextualize. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But that's the thing about this storm, right? Is I'm just in awe at how fucking miserable it seems to be in this thing. It's the storm itself is like a real life thunderstorm kind of dialed up to 11. I love the way cold water just seems to get through your clothes at angles that don't make sense. Because I think that happens in real storms. Like, it drives me nuts. And so it's like it's all the aspects of a real thunderstorm dialed up to 11. But then we've also got the like the echoes are the real icing on the cake. The way it's just like, if something bad happens to you, then you get swarmed by echoes in the like. This is just such a shit place to be. Why does Deb do this?
Yeah, it's a pretty rough time for anyone involved, for sure. And it's nice that, like, we obviously are seeing the version of it that's not turned against you, right? Like, Lucy is seeing a lot of elementals and they go for somebody else because Deb is kind of trying to keep the team safe. Now that Deb is potentially off the battlefield, I'm really worried about what this storm is going to look like in the presumably Verona chapter we're going to get next. Where she maybe is going to get assaulted by a bunch of echoes. It will be very fun.
Yeah. Well, no, is it Anne's the one controlling the echoes, I'm pretty sure, and I don't remember where she's at.
I think Deb's she also gets shot.
She does. Okay, yeah, that's right.
Is that right? Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, so it's going to be fun to see what we're cooking next chapter, because the storm and the echoes are going to be a bit rowdy from the looks of it. But I just love this vibe with this storm of, like, how it kicks you when you're down. Like, our protagonists aren't dealing with it anywhere near as much, but every time you see the enemies, it's just like, they get knocked down and then they get swarmed with echoes, and it's just like, fuck this. And, like, what does the abyssal version of this look like? I don't even want to know.
Yeah. Let's not focus on it. It would probably be horrible. I mean, we got a taste of it. Was that last chapter when we had the lady who kind of fed off of Lucy's self-doubt? They felt pretty abyssal vibes to me.
Well, I think that, but that was like a very ruins-coded boogeyman. Anyway, I don't know.
Anyway. So what I want to talk about, and I apologize, I'm not fully caught up on the podcast, so I don't know how much you talked about this on the previous episode, was how do we feel about Lucy's order to kill Joel and her kind of grim acceptance of it at the start of this chapter? Like, she kind of watches Joel die at the start of this chapter, right?
And it's pretty brutal. Like,
it is.
Like, just the death, like, as a general thing. It's just like she watches it with his side as it's like the bleeding turns to blackness because he goes from bleeding to dying. Yeah, so it's pretty gnarly.
And he's kind of like desperately clawing at his throat a bit and trying to, like, and the Kims are like, Joel, come back here, put up your protections, and he just kind of dies. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, it obviously is grim, but I felt good about it. I liked it. I was like...
It feels like a strong positive reaction.
Yeah, like, obviously Lucy has been struggling with the death of Alexander for a while, but, like, I don't know. I was just like, I'm happy for Joel to die in this situation, I don't think Jasmine will like it when she finds out, but I'm happy for it.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely picking at that thread that the story's really been building up of how the Kenneteers and Lucy in particular are kind of getting, like, numbed and desensitized by this war. Because I do think, like, I kind of agree, like, Joel didn't seem that bad by Charles's side standards. But, like, his shtick is kind of hunting elementals and, like, just hunting, like, being a hunter doesn't sit right with me. So, like, he was some form of dickhead, but I don't know, it is upsetting the way Lucy's just like, she's like, I made this deal with my implement that I would sometimes have to hear and see bad things or whatever, and so she just, like, watches this dude who she kind of implicitly okayed a death penalty for die. But then also it's a war. It's just I'm just confused by it. I hate it, but also it's like, I don't know what else is meant to happen here. I'm just angry at the situation we find ourselves in, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, I guess I am of the opinion that Charles and co have continued to keep escalating things and making them worse and worse. It's that same kind of argument of, like, that the whole story has been kind of about of, you can't just let people do bad things without kind of escalating the consequences to match, or else they will just abuse that system. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess it's just interesting because I like, Joel doesn't seem like the worst person on their team. He was just the most killable right now. And it's like, I mean, I don't even really know what I'm saying. I just, like, I don't feel comfortable saying I'm happy that he's dead, but it's also, I'm not comfortable saying that it was, like, the wrong thing either. I'm just like,
nah, I'm happy that he's dead.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, thanks. It's good to be. I wanted to say, actually, like, Jenny and Malia did such a great job being on the show. They're so, like, fun and positive. I really want to make sure that I'm bringing a different vibe. So I'm going to lean full into the chaotic neutral vibe of the podcast show host. That's what I'm going for.
Great. I love it. I was copying shit for enjoying some of the horror too much. So hopefully we'll have a lot of that energy now.
Yeah, totally.
I had this fun theory, like my current little tinfoil I've got going. You know how Grandfather had this special bullet and it like got past all of Joel's defenses and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping it was one of the ones Raphael the Witch Hunter brought in Arc 10. You know how he had his super bullets that like even almost killed John?
You're right. Raph, man, what a fun character he was. And he just got murked. Oh, good times.
And he probably had some more of those special bullets. So, yeah.
So retroactively, I think it was Guillerme who got him, or Marcy who got him killed by the ghouls, you know? Worth it.
Yeah, and it was just because one of those almost killed John. I think it would be fun for Grandfather to be using it to kill a hunter. Also, so like Joel dies, and there's a lot of fanfare around that. But it's also low-key implied that Leonard dies here.
Yes, she sees the Kims and Leonard lying on the lawn, and then the Kims get up, but Leonard we don't hear about. I don't think.
I mean, I guess he could have been rescued or whatever, but I guess I kind of hope he's dead. I mean, I bore for his death than Joel's. Leonard seemed like a pretty intense piece of shit.
Yep, a real jerk. Yeah, he might have some trick to survive, but we don't know.
Azizza did it brings up a great point in the chat, which is that he's like abyssal, and Boogeyman's whole thing is that they can bounce back. So like,
it's true.
Not out of the realm of possibility. He's got some shit baked in.
We don't know, I guess, is the answer at this point.
Yeah,
but definitely took a big hit. But yeah, so the Kims are fine, though. They immediately start coming back after Lucy and Grandfather, who have now revealed their position. And Lucy gets kind of minorly horrified and then trapped in an evil maze.
Yeah, I this maze is so cool. It's some like fucking Doctor Strange bullshit. And it seems like the maze is also the guy. Like it's like he's like placating himself with the space.
Well, that's everything about the Kims, right? Like everything that you think is secretly something else is actually just a little bit of Kim Lim sneaking in there.
Yeah. And I love the coordinate system they have. Like my favorite bit is how they're talking. Like it's all this Greek shit, and then one of the words is just like bone wise. Like they're like go psi gamma delta bone wise. It's just like just fucking getting some body horror into this like Greek coordinate system is very fun.
Yeah, it's fun having them have a little strike team set of codes with each other, but then they're just like weird references. I guess compared to the other strike team secret code that Seth and the Bad Dogs have, which is Rot 13, which is also fun.
I looked at it and I was like, man, that looks like Rot 13 back from before Discord had spoilers. And I plugged it into Rot 13 and it pretty much translates exactly. And I was like, come on,
very funny. No, I don't know. My headcanon is in universe, it's not Rot 13, but Wapo just made it Rot 13 as a funny in-joke for people who used to post spoilers in Rot 13 on the comments of the, WordPress comments of the, like, worm and stuff. Anyway. So yeah, I mean, Lucy basically immediately gets caught, and I know that Lucy isn't going to die in my heart, because Wildbone knows that if Lucy does die, I'll figure out a way to bring book characters to life so that I can extract my horrific revenge upon the Kims, and that's too dark even for Wildbone. But still seeing her in these like early stages of getting horrified is very, very spooky. Like my heart was in my throat for sure.
See, that seems to have been the normal reaction. I just thought, I think I went in full denial, like immediately. It was like Lucy's back broke, and I'm like, well, this is going to get undone. That can't happen. So I just was like enjoying it. I was like, this is funny and probably going to leave some emotional scars. And weirdly, it doesn't. Like,
yeah, she's kind of fine, which is good.
Well, I like it. Lucy's kind of like almost immediately. She's like, oh, it's illusory or self-reversing, so it wasn't kind of real. And I'm like, no, I think you just got really lucky that Grandfather stopped him before he was done. I think that was real. Just like obviously reversible if it wasn't finished. But it's like I think like Lucy kind of downplays how close she came to getting proper horrified there.
Yeah, I really like the reaction that it instills in Grandfather, where he sees that kind of is like, all right, got to save Lucy, and just goes kind of blasting. You know, like obviously hanging kind of heavily over these last chapter and this chapter is the fact that Grandfather might become Lucy's familiar, right? And so it seems like Grandfather saving Lucy here and then Lucy saving Grandfather later is like them almost kind of testing the waters of that a bit. And I loved it. I love it here where like, you know, it's just like, I mean, you know, obviously they would save each other anyway, but like it just fits into the evolving narrative of them becoming familiar and master. What's the other word for that? Let's not worry about it.
Yeah, I'd just say familiars. Yeah. No, I agree. It definitely feels even more important and like means even more while that is a discussion that's kind of lingering around the fringes at the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
I do love your idea though of like if Lucy did die, would we just keep doing the podcast as if she hadn't? Like I was trying to think what decisions Wildblood could make in the story that I would disagree with so strongly I would just continue the podcast as if they hadn't happened. Like we would just keep talking about Lucy chapters that we made up that went between real chapters or something.
I see. You don't mean like we change and we become a Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality podcast or something?
No, as in we just keep talking about Pale, but we just like ignore the chapter we don't like. Like, so it's just like, oh yeah, and then the 3 Kennetys, even if there's only 2 of them. And I mean, you know, I'm saying this fully knowing that we didn't do that for Avery, so...
Yeah, Avery died, didn't do that. John died, didn't do that. Alexander died, didn't do that. That was probably the worst one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean... But then the problem is then we'd have to figure out fun and interesting things that the characters could get up to. Maybe, I mean, is there Pale, like... You know, fanfic that we could just be like, oh, in this chapter, now Lucy's hanging out with Optimus Prime and they go and they fight a Clem's murder truck or whatever, right?
We'll just hire like someone from OMO to just like write the version of the story that we want and then we'll talk about that. But we'll we'll also pay them to do specific things. So like, God, I can't even think of an example, but you know, just like there'll be like cool self-inserts of the 2 of us who like everybody who are super popular in the story and everybody loves them.
Well, who's that cool practitioner? His name is Ruben the Hedgehog and he's very badass.
Exactly.
Speaking of fun alternate universe character cameos, we get a cameo from Hootie from the Owl House here. Elisheba, clearly an Owl House fan.
Oh, that's great. I mean, yeah, except Elisheba's less off-putting than Hootie. I think we could all agree.
It's very fun that Lucy sees Elisheba's face coming after her and it's just like, barrier, and then the face just slams into it like, yeah, nice. That was very fun.
Elisheba's whole deal, I was like, this is the coolest horror practice we've seen. Like, the way her like neck is tearing, there's like extra eyes. It's just fucking weird, but it's like, it's the best kind of body horror. It's great.
I just want to call out this great comment that Sengachi has made in the Discord. Hootie is the true host for long. So good. Very clever. I think Elisheba has a few good moments. Like when she says to Grandfather, don't waste your bullets, and then Grandfather shoots her. It's just a classic. Grandfather's like, I don't care about practice. I can just shoot it. I know you're going to come back, but I'm still just going to shoot you.
Well, and it's also, I think it's like Grandfather's the worst person to make that argument to, because he of all people understands how much of a pain in the ass it still is if bullets temporarily stop you.
Yes.
Right,
they
right,
don't
like,
have to kill you. They can just slow you down. That's enough.
Yeah, like it's so funny that it like because like this is the whole thing with this moment is like after this like they're kind of running away and Grandfather and Lucy seem a bit put off because it's like we keep shooting them with bullets and then they just get better and keep coming at us. And part of me was just like, oh, geez, that must be so annoying. Like,
yeah.
Like, I just thought that was so funny, I think, coming from Lucy and Grandfather of all people. And there's probably some, like, I only had that thought right before the recording. And so I was like annoyed because I'm like, there's probably some interesting comparisons to do between the Kims and the Dogs of War and like how they fit into both of their sides. I feel like the Kims are being used as the Dogs of War of Charles's side. But maybe
then we get the actual Dogs of War.
Yeah, they also have some Dogs of War that they captured. Yeah. But like I don't know, just the way that like the Kims represent like what Jasmine thinks the Dogs of War kind of are, right? Like the Kims are just kind of animals who are doing horrific shit and have kind of been are just fucking monsters and stuff, and like, you know, they've got some of the same abilities as the dog tags, but also worse ones.
Yeah, yeah, they're rough.
Yeah, and then because I guess there's Lucy's whole thing about like being bulletproof, and it's like, you know, as she gets closer to the dog tags, it feels like it's less about being bulletproof and more about being bullets hit you and then they hurt you, but you shake it off and keep going. Like, you know, the thing with dog tags, right, is they're not bulletproof. They just like
No.
it just slows them down, then they keep going because they're resolute.
Yeah.
And that, like, so it's like it's just funny watching, like, as Lucy has become more and more that sort of person. She's not bulletproof. She's bullet shake offable, and it's like that's becoming her, and she's just getting mad at the Kims for being the same.
Yeah, but I guess for practitioners, if you're hit by a bullet, it still counts, right? Like everyone has their bullet deflecting wards up for this next bit, right? Like,
yeah.
That's the real trick, is getting a ward that makes it so bullets just kind of don't hit you. But yeah. So inside this shifting maze, Lucy and Grandfather get split up. Lucy's able to escape with some grounding ball shenanigans, but Grandfather does not come out as well.
Yeah, but Dory, there's a whole fun conversation about whether or not we should go back in there and get it.
Yeah, hey, it hadn't occurred to me, but the grounding balls could be a really powerful tool against the Kims. I was kind of thinking about this after this bit where, like, because so this maze is the guy, right? Is the old guy. I can't remember what's it. Alpheus is the other kid, or is it? I can't remember.
No, yeah, Alpheus is the guy who like keeps trying to horrify people,
magnetize,
who locks onto you. I don't think this guy gets a name. He just gets described as like reverend looking.
For simplicity, maybe let's call him Grandfather.
Okay,
because he had grandfather vibes to me.
Sure,
but anyway, so yeah, if if the maze is him, the Reverend, and the grounding ball does kind of ground it, you know, like does kind of turn it back into normalness. So it really made me think about what would happen if you just hit one of the Kims with a grounding ball. Like, would it just completely fuck them up? Because, like, yeah, I don't know. Or have they convinced the spirits that they're human enough that it wouldn't really do anything? I don't know. But I feel like it would be really interesting to see. Because it worked on the maze, and the maze is the guy. So would it work on the guy? Maybe.
It definitely seems like an experiment worth trying, right? Like, I feel like it wouldn't work because it seems like Helen still had her body when she was forsworn. And I feel like if forswearing doesn't break that down, then like a base, you know, one of Avery's little goofy baseballs won't. But
yeah, because like I guess the spirits, the point of the Kims is the spirits think that they're just people who can do horror practice, right?
Yeah.
Spirits don't know their little secret. So presumably the grounding ball. Although, having said that, like, maybe there's a delineation between, like, you know, regular world spirits and like path spirits, because as soon as Avery was on the path, she started to see a lot of stuff about the Kims, you know, that's mentioned in this chapter, like that they're kind of strings that are connecting multiple different things and like starting to get the hints of what they are. So maybe the lost / path spirits would have a better idea. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, what this has actually made me think is what would be a great way to fight the Kims is like, do you remember when Verona was glamored as a cat and then she ran into Sharon and she almost started to become a cat because Sharon's skeptic thing locked up. So if you just force the Kims to hang out with Sharon for long enough, which is already a funny enough punishment to
level just turn into people.
Yeah, they lose the the whole we're just regular humans thing actually starts to become true.
That is quite a funny idea. I do like that. All right, well fixed. Shame that Sharon wasn't in the group of Aware that came from Sergeant's Hall.
Yeah. Actually, sorry. Just so brings up a good point, which is that is actually kind of what the Kenneteers are trying to do by bringing all the innocents in, is like fuck the Kims over by making them reveal themselves to innocents. But yeah, I guess speaking of like, well, just like, you know, while we're talking about Grandfather a lot this chapter as well, I want to talk a bit about, like, I think it's really interesting the way as him becoming a familiar becomes more and more of a thing, how different his relationship is with Lucy to John's still. Like, we used to talk about this a lot in the early arcs, but like there's been a really different balance to Lucy and the dog's relationships after John, because John was very much like a straight up father and protector. Like, he was always more capable than Lucy. That was why he beat her and got to go kill himself. whereas like Lucy's had a much more even footing with these dogs, and that's never really kind of sat right with her. But she's finally found that sort of groove with Grandfather.
Yeah.
And it made me think a lot about like Booker as well, because there was definitely a chunk of the story where I think Lucy was projecting some of her need dadness onto Booker, and that's why, like, you know, Alyssa
That's why
was
he had to leave the story before he died.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, that's why like Alyssa copped so much shit as
Yes.
the girlfriend, because you know Alyssa was kind of being projected on as a new mom in some ways.
Yeah.
And like I think what's interesting is Grandfather, like in some ways almost feels more like that kind of, like he's got less of a fatherly vibe, and this is the opposite of what I was saying last week, which is why it's been like sitting in my head. But it's like he does feel more like an older brother or a compatriot than a dad in some ways for Lucy, and that's a really fun angle, I think, to their potential relationship. Is like it is a bit more even footed. He's been less of a dad to her, and he is just more like a general brotherly masculine figure.
Well, he's less of a mentor, right? I think that was the thing with John. Was John really clearly was quite a strong mentor figure to Lucy, whereas you're right, for Grandfather, it does feel like they're on even footing.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why, like, that's sort of the reason I think Booker came into things, because like Booker should be more like that, but he has kind of slotted into more of a dad role. Like if you think about all the talks he's had with Lucy, he's often getting used by Jasmine to talk to Lucy in a way that it feels like is probably what Jasmine would be getting their dad to do if he was still alive.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So it's like, in a way, I think the gap that neither we nor Lucy was really aware that she had and what she needed was maybe just like a brother.
Yeah.
Anyway,
very interesting.
Again, this is another one of those points where I didn't get to write it out as much as I would have liked. So hopefully that off the cuff summary kind of made sense.
No, I think it makes sense. I think part of growing up, because Booker is like, what, 4 or 5 years older than Lucy, right? Like, it's not a small age gap. It's big enough to be somewhat like moderate. I think part of Lucy growing up and becoming an adult will be not needing father figures, but needing equals, right? Like, that's a progression I think that you make as you grow up. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think John, the difference between Grandfather and John does kind of highlight that.
Yeah, and I guess that's just, you're right, that's another nuance to the, like, because that's a lot of what the story's been talking about recently, is this idea of like not just growing up, but how your relationship with your parents adjusts as you transition from child to adult. And like I guess that transition from a relationship like the one she had with John to a relationship like the one she had with Grandfather is like kind of maps to that in an interesting way. Yeah.
But yeah, so Lucy regroups a bit, then convinces her gang to rescue Grandfather. It does take a little bit of time to convince, but then he is saved pretty easily once everyone's on board.
I love Anne so much, because that's who we're talking about here. Like, Anne comes in. I love this bit where Anne is like, I don't know how you can prioritize another like that, but I guess you're strong enough that you can just do your silly things, like care about his life, and you can make it happen.
Yeah, you can really feel that the Kennetiers have earned the respect of Anne and some of the more prickly members of the council. But of course, Anne would never phrase it like that. The way Anne would phrase it is by still, I guess, in direct contrast to what we were just talking about, Anne still needs to feel like she's placing herself above people. So she's in the mentor role, being like, well, I'll do it. And it's because I'm teaching you and I'm helping you because I'm so good. That's the vibe.
Well, it's also, I think she's just still blatantly otherist. Like at Avery's dealt with that from her a lot. It's just like, but she's sort of like, she's still very much, she's like, well, I guess you're powerful enough that you can do silly things like this. It's fine. It's like, I guess that is step one of Miss's original plan, which is like people like Anne will, step two is for Anne to start to realize that it's because Lucy has these strong relationships with others that she is as powerful as she is. And maybe Anne's a lost cause, but maybe we can get Tiny Anne in on that step. Because there's even more fun stuff. Like, Anne has these things where I love the stuff where Anne is like, you've got to stop asking me for favors. And Lucy's like, what? So do I just demand stuff from you? And Anne is like, a confident personality is key. She's just such a fucking idiot. But like, I hope that Anne and Lucy do sync up in the future. Like I mentorship Anne and Lucy, I think. Anne is just another toxic father figure, so she makes another great addition to Lucy's whole array of dad teachers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a speed run by Anne of mentor to getting shot.
Yeah,
she
true.
really speeds on the Lucy's mentor path.
They haven't even had a formal lesson yet. She's already getting killed.
She's
like
already,
one of
she's already killed. I hope that Anne and Deb aren't dead. I kind of worry that at least one of them is dead, but you know, we'll see.
I won't accept it. Again, we'll hire that person from OMO to write the version where they survived.
To give us the fanfic. Anne and Deb go off and have a, not Thelma and Louise, a thing where they hate each other. Yeah. Anyway.
But no, like, because I think like Anne and Luce is one of those pairings. I think we talked about this with her and Sebastian Harless too. It's like they're both good for each other. Like Anne, I think, would help Lucy maybe understand like soft power and stuff more, but then also Lucy would fix Anne a lot. There's obviously a lot of room for improvement there, but that like Anne's whole thing as well. Like it's easy to forget how Anne kind of invented her own practice that synergizes stuff, which is exactly what Lucy's doing. Like there's a lot of really interesting overlap in what they do, and they could probably both provide a lot of interesting stuff for each other. Like there's some really like they could do so much cool shit together if we can get past Anne's personality problems. I just really hope they do.
Yeah. We'll have to see. Hey, speaking of people being dead, that move that Lucy does where she smashes that guy with a fucking tree trunk, pretty baller. I mean, it takes it out of her. Like she has to take a few deep breaths afterwards, but he gets smeared, I think is the word used. I don't know. It's pretty rough. It's very fun.
I just love how she's like, oh, that took it out a bit. Like, I really wanted to do more of that. And she like immediately start trying to she starts trying to draw earth runes on them. So she's like, these earth baseballs aren't working for me. So I'm going to build a giant earth baseball bat, which is just like, again, Lucy is the most anime fighter I think we've ever seen. Actually, no, this is probably moving from anime and into Looney Tunes territory.
Yeah. Very fun. Very good stuff.
Bree is also doing some good work here. Bree comes out and it turns out she's just been having an absolute meal and a half in this storm and can just shoot out elementals now. Like, I love Bree as this threat. It's like the more toxic the environment becomes, the more Bree just fucking thrives.
Yeah. Bree is killing it.
Yeah. Oh, and we get this little thing, the one update we get on Avery in this chapter, because like as you said, it really feels like we're heading for these 3 chapters from each Kinetira as they each do their step in the plan. But we get this fun detail that when we're asked where the Aurum is, we get told that the Aurum intercepted Avery. And I just had flashbacks to the end of Arc 21 with that. I was like, oh, here we fucking go again. The Aurum and Avery rematch. I'm excited.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I wonder. Yeah, because we got... 10 Mercy was there as well, like in Avery's last chapter. So we're almost getting a full rematch of the Aurum preparatory contest.
Yeah, R.I.P. Freeman, I guess.
See you, Freeman. You fought well.
Not well enough.
So yeah, just when things are starting to go a little bit too well, the Kims start to turn it up a notch. They start to make a tree of hands in the sky and battling back the lightning and leaving a baby in its place. Yep, that's pretty much what happens, right? I mean, I didn't just have a fever dream. No, that's what it is. But then simultaneously we have, unfortunately, kidnapped dog tags start firing back and shooting our BFFs.
Oh, which is like, there's a lot to unpack. First of all, this chapter, like... I mean, we've been talking about it, but it's just worth like calling out as a separate point. This chapter is just fucking cool. Like, there's just so much crazy shit. Like, wall-to-wall banger bonkers moments in this chapter. Like, this felt like packed on steroids, this chapter. And that's saying something because
very great. Yeah, packed on steroids.
Packed was already pretty roided out, you know? Like, I got just so angry.
The dog tags?
At the dog, well, but not at the dog tags, but at the situation of the dog tags attacking them. Because it's so fucked. And like Lucy's like having to think like, is Horseman using information he knows about me to fuck with me and
Yeah.
it's like he probably is because he has orders
100%.
to, and like from Horseman's perspective, that must fucking suck. Like,
Oh
it's
yeah.
just such, it like God, like it's so, it just makes me so fucking mad.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't think we've had this situation happen in the story yet where a friend has been bound and sent back. But the concept of like bouncing back an other is one that exists, right? And our
Yeah,
Kennetys have done it a few times. But now that we're seeing what is effectively that, albeit a bit slower, with more binding, it's like it's horrible. It's really horrible.
yeah. This I think is the first time we've really seen it happen with like a friend, like a
Yeah.
character who we know. I mean,
Yeah.
like not the first time ever, because obviously there was like Ram Jam and some other
Yeah.
dead people, but like this is our first time seeing a real intense fight
Yes.
with a friend who's been bound or sent back at us, and that just hits so much harder like when it is someone who we know.
Mm.
And we saw Horseman being so good in Teddy's interlude earlier in the arc.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very yeah, it hurts. It hurts.
Yeah.
It's fun that grandfather takes out a key player from Charles's side, and then the dog tags take out Deb, who is now Debbed. But I don't know. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it was the two heavy elementalist people, right? Like Joel was their best answer to the storm. Deb was the person kind of controlling the storm. It does feel very fitting that the elementally aligned people are the ones who came in, hit the hardest, and then also disappeared the fastest. I mean, that's what elementalism's all about. Hit hard, hit fast, die.
And then head off. Yeah, rough. But yeah,
So,
I mean,
did we talk about the bit? Sorry, speaking about like cool moments of this chapter, there's a part where Deb just turns into an elemental to fast travel.
Yeah,
which she's just like, I need to get from A to B, so I'm just going to be lightning for a bit, and that's just something she can do. And there's not really any fanfare in the story around the fact that is something she can do, which is crazy.
Well, we've seen the Kennetiers turn into wind before. It's not that far off.
I mean, I guess, but they use glamour for that. Deb just does it.
Yeah, true. It is cool. It is very cool to just electro around.
Yeah. Should we talk about the big baby?
I mean, I don't even
know. And I don't mean
what...
Anne. Got him?
Obviously, I think we're setting up for Verona chapter next, right?
That was my first thought when I was like, I don't know what this is, but I was like, as I was reading the chapter, I was like, I think we're heading for a Verona chapter, and she's probably figured it out. So like, I can just wait for her to tell me.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like, I feel like next chapter we'll get our chance to talk about the big baby. I don't know what the fuck it could possibly be.
Well, we get told there's heavy indication that it might be a titan, but we don't know what a titan is. So it's like, that doesn't really help.
Following along the Hootie thread, a titan is like a big monster, and titan's blood is magic and lets you travel between worlds. There's a lot of Owl House in this chapter.
Wabbo's actually just gotten into the Owl House, and it's really coming through. Yeah, no, I really like
the practitioner drawing sigils on paper, and it's loose. Oh my god, wow! And then obviously the three Kennetiers get along with Luce because they both draw little sigils on paper, cards. It's like, oh wow, yeah, it really makes sense.
I mean, like when Wabbo loses us and we're following our paid for fan fork of Pale, we can just make an Owl House crossover canon.
Of course,
we'll reach out to Dana. We'll get it made official. Our house canon too. I'm sure that'll be easy.
Yeah, easy. Do you think that? I mean, like, there's so many similarities between Luce's magic system in the Owl House and the way to get his use spell cards.
I think that's a coincidence. Like,
I don't think
those two things
BFFs,
invented it.
Wabbo and Dana. They must be.
Yeah, but there's definitely like some fun. Like the Owl House and Pale around the same time were definitely tapping into that same, like, I don't know what to call it, like witch core.
Yes.
Like in the same way that, like, like the worm took off like around the same time. I think superhero movies just started to really, like, that was like when the MCU started. So it's like Wabbo does just keep tapping into cool aesthetics.
He's got his finger on the pulse.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, the thing that I really find interesting about the big baby personally is, like, I was constantly looking for clues in this chapter. Like, I'm still convinced that Charles is planning something really fun in the region to, screw over London and stuff. And there's indication that the big baby might be a part of that. And I love this idea. They compare it to like the tutelary hot girl totem spirit things, where you can kind of use one of these things, and it's like, oh, if this Titan baby is meant to be one of those for the whole region, like it totally tracks with Charles's MO for me to build something that changes karma in the whole region and does like something like, I don't know, like gives you better karma if you struggle more or whatever dumb shit, like something along those lines. Like I think what we might be seeing is them getting pressured into and rushing out like something. Is it Joseph who's the alchemist was cooking? Like this feels like the sort of thing I was expecting Charles to be working on in the background. It's a giant spirit that affects karma in the whole region and kind of changes the rules to reward some stupid thing Charles wants to reward. Like I totally buy that's one of the primary features of this thing.
Yeah. I don't know. It could be anything, really, right? Like it's so out there of making a giant baby of a monster that's presumably going to rapidly grow up and become a real threat by the end of next chapter.
Yeah, but that's a Verona problem. Like
it's such an iconic Verona problem. Yes, there's nothing more iconically Verona than having to fight a giant baby.
Yeah, and I mean, like the story is very overt with like. Lucy sees the big baby, gets distracted by people shooting bullets, which is much more of a Lucy problem. So she runs back and literally tags Verona in. She's like, "Hey, the big baby, that's a Verona problem."
Yeah, it's a hype ending to the chapter. Like, it's crazy to me to be like, okay, what are the problems that are coming up for next chapter? The Kims, the big baby, and maybe a little bit of Aurum or whatever stuff. And I'm just kind of like, well, I can see a world where Verona defeats both the Kims and the giant baby by the end of the next chapter. And then I just kind of stopped for a moment. I was like, that's crazy. Like, it's insane that I would think that a 13-year-old could do that, but it's very much possible.
Well, she's 14. Does
Sorry, yes, 14. That's okay then, yeah. It's like, that would just be a fucking Tuesday for Verona. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, well, this is the thing, right? It's such a Verona problem. It's just like, hey, Verona, there's like all this wacky, big picture, crazy stuff going on. Can you just like do some weird shit?
Can you just pull some stuff out? Oh yeah, great. Yeah, I'll explode the Kim's house into a million pieces, and I'll shoot a baby. Why not?
I mean, all the best Wild Boat protagonists.
All the best Wild Boat protagonists shoot babies. Yeah.
It's a very hype ending. I mean, the tagging you in thing being explicit, because I don't think we were the only two who were kind of reading this chapter and going, oh, I see, we're is
setting up for Verona. Yeah.
Well, the last chapter, like last week's chapter, ended on that note of Lucy thinking to herself, I make them rise, Verona sets things up, Avery makes them fall, and then as this chapter's going, you're sort of like, oh, I see. We're seeing Lucy make them rise. So next chapter will be Verona setting things up. Third chapter is Avery makes them fall. Well, that's the plan anyway. I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed, that's what we see. But so you sort of get this vibe, and you're like, oh, I think we're leading into this Verona chapter, and then this is the way that the story explicitly sort of like tagging you in. Like, there's a pact moment that I'm sure I'm not the only one who was reminded of that. I won't get any more specific, obviously, but there was that one point in Pact where it's the same hype, and you're just like, this is so fucking cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, a great chapter to come back for. I loved it. There's so much fun stuff in here.
Yeah, like, we don't quite know what Verona is setting up, I think, is what's fun. Like,
no.
It's like, we all trust Verona has some bonkers fucking plan, and this may even be Rook's plan. Fucking question mark. Whatever the fuck that
Rook
means.
doesn't have a plan, Elliot.
Yeah,
okay?
Sorry,
it's actually wrong to suggest that she does.
Yeah, Rook's not planned. Like, there's so many moving pieces here. I can't wait to see what Verona throws at us next chapter. And then in Avery's chapter, she's got to make them fall, but also the Aurum's in there at some point.
Yeah. Good chappy. But of course, we've got some other stuff to cover because we also do our pale predictions and our discussion question, Elliot. So let's start with some predictions, shall we?
Yeah.
Well, actually, we didn't pull out predictions. We just pulled out comments from the Reddit. I forgot that's how we do things.
I was going to say. I'll quickly jump in with mine, because something that came up in my live read, but I didn't put in the notes, and I'm glad this person was thinking more about it, is like, so Knowledge Nomad basically made a comment looking at how grandfather might have changed after killing Joel, because remember, dogs of war, after they get a kill, they level up. And I like made that comment when Joel died, but totally did not notice any changes in him. Whereas Knowledge Nomad, I think, hit the nail on the head, where it's like, after this, Grandfather is a lot more in his conversations with Lucy, kind of problem solving ways to kill these big others. Like he talks about the Kims and he's like, oh, can we like cut these strings? And then he's a bit more like vocal on the battlefield too, because remember he killed Joel in the throat, so that's presumably the sort of stuff from Joel he's going to get. So I just really like that sort of insight from Knowledge Nomad that they actually picked up on how Grandfather seemed to change a little bit after killing him.
Yeah. It's a good call. It's a good pick out by Knowledge Nomad.
Yeah.
I wonder, again, it makes me think about the ethical implications of just having Grandfather kill a bunch of interesting and useful opponents to get their powers. But let's not follow that too much, I guess.
No, it is kind of that thing where it's like when we're in a war, like if the war's already happening, right? Like we're fighting Charles's side, that's going down. It is sort of like, okay, here are our enemies, and here are the places we want you to shoot them as dog tags, because like, this is the best part of Leonard. So, like shoot Leonard in the hand because he's great. He's got great hands. So, kill him hand wise, like stuff like that. Like if you're already going to war, you may as well get your boys to get the best level ups possible.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's like when Joseph was telling Teddy that it's like when you kill someone, you've got to loot the corpse, right? Like if you're gonna do a murder, I think the least you can do is make that death
use every part of the buffalo.
Honor that death by getting the maximal loot possible.
Yeah, for sure. I put out a comment by Ghostly Bird, but we kind of already talked about it, which was the idea that the baby was a Titan, which was new to me when I read this comment, but then you started talking about it. So Ghostly Bird also pulled out thinking about a Titan and what it would be capable of. Do we have any other thoughts on that?
So, like in my live read, some people were bringing up all the other times Titans have been mentioned in the story, and the answer's not really. Like you can sort of make some assumptions. Like there's talks of higher powers, and obviously, like Titans were the parents of the Olympic gods.
Yes, but then all kind of got locked up. Like
so like we're definitely dealing with some higher power bullshit, but like. I get a bit confused on, like, when you start talking about higher powers, it's like, what's a higher power? But it's not a god and it's not a judge. And I'm a bit like, man, all this shit kind of seems like it blurs together a bit for me. It's just big, powerful, can do shit stuff, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, I expect Verona will explain it to us in, the first 2,000 words of next chapter.
Thanks, Verona. So thank you everyone for leaving your comments. Of course, you can leave your predictions in our Pale Predictor form, which is linked in the show notes down below. We'll usually let them build up for a bit and then pull more out. So we've got a few in there that we might pull out next week. But if you want to leave more, if you want to predict what a Titan will do or what crazy shenanigans Verona's going to pull or any stuff like that, pop it in the Pale Predictor form. You can find the link in the show notes, as I said.
Yeah. But should we get into the discussion question
discussion
Emily and I asked?
Yeah.
So we asked...
Sorry.
Yep. We asked which element would be the worst storm to work in and which element would have the coolest elementals. And this also led to some fun discussion on our Discord of what exactly is and isn't an element. That, it still feels somewhat unclear to me, but whatever.
Yeah. Elements. Very cool. There were a lot of cool answers to this discussion question, I think. Which was your favorite, Elliot?
Oh, I mean, not to just blatantly pick a favorite, but the vice versa.
Oh, that was my favorite. You stole mine.
So, I mean, all the other answers are good. Don't get me wrong, but vice versa picked the element of darkness, which, like, is obviously Verona's element, and I love particularly their idea for. She talked about an inverted lightning strike.
Well, let me read out. I put out the quote from her answer. Imagine, if you would, an inverted lightning strike, a flash of blindness followed by a clap of consuming absolute silence. Someone has been struck, and instead of being overloaded with energy, they've been emptied out.
Oh, so cool.
So cool. Such a cool vibe. I love it.
There are honestly moments during... Because I read that answer before I read this chapter, and there were moments where the way Lucy was getting, like, blinded by lightning strikes and stuff, I was thinking, God, this is like almost as cool as Vice Versailles thing. I really want to see a darkness storm.
Yeah, it was a cool idea. But there are a lot of cool answers. I thought I liked Beleg Tal, who described living through an ice storm, which kind of built up over a few days and then covered everything in ice that's heavy enough that like trees and infrastructure just kind of starts collapsing under its own weight, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Plus, ice elementals would be cool, I guess.
Yeah. I think that was meant to be a pun.
Wait, a pun on what?
Because they're the coolest elemental.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. God, fuck me. I'm easily impressed. Sansa is not going to get more than this mention.
Yeah. I mean, was it the element of surprise? Which fucking yeah. I mean, I've made stupider jokes. I shouldn't judge. We got an answer from Rabid Bunnies 22. Who, first of all, congrats for catching up to the podcast, as they mentioned. But they brought up that they hate heat, so like a fire-related storm, like and cold's an element, so I don't see why heat itself can't be an element.
Sure.
But yeah, they personally would hate like a heat or a firestorm, and I'm like, I get that. I'm kind of the same. I prefer to rug up than to strip down.
They also mention. Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
I was going to say they also mentioned a Darude sandstorm would be pretty scary in a horror way. I like the idea of a sandstorm blinding you and being very like yeah, I know. I just like sand
Ruben, you
everywhere.
Haven't listened. So you haven't listened to last week's episode, have you? We already did the Darude sandstorm jokes.
Did you? Oh, yeah. I'm only halfway through it.
Sorry, that got done as we asked the question. We banned him halfway through asking the question.
Shit.
Anyway. Whereas I think Rabid Bunnies just talked about an actual sandstorm, right?
I swear I saw the word Darude in there somewhere.
Oh, maybe. But yeah, I do think like sand elementals would be pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. Hobo Demon mentions an acid storm, which gets covered by someone else. I'll get to that in a second. But they also mention a shit storm and like goblin-esque filth and grotesqueness storm, which I think is a very fun idea. I really like that idea by Hobo Demon. It's great stuff.
And I mean, that's the sort of thing that I think Lucy and Deb could team up on, because Lucy's got the goblin side to her combat. So maybe it's more of a Liberty thing. But anyway, that would be fun.
Yeah. So the other one who mentioned the acid storm was who was it? Oh, Captain Rhino. Yes. Their take on the acid storm was a storm that would just kind of slowly dissolve you over multiple days, which is crazy. Ellie, did you enjoy that answer?
I did enjoy that. The focus on just slowly eating away at your flesh was fun.
Yeah, very cool stuff.
Yeah. Sorry, I think we both just laughing at Aziza did it in the chat, who brought up that if you walk into an acid storm, you also start tripping balls. Yeah. Very fun joke. 10 out of 10.
Propaganda Pagoda mentions a smoke storm, which would be fun. Very, very Lucy-esque storm, I suppose. But then also just thinking about what would a metal storm and metal elementals would be very interesting, just to be like, what are they like? Metal is such a new element in the Otherverse that it would be so interesting to find out what a metal elemental, God, that's a tongue twister, would actually be like.
Yeah, and like similarly, Top Series 341 was talking about like a glass storm, which I love your call out that a glass storm is when a sandstorm and a firestorm team up.
Yep, that when they have a baby. That's going to be, I'm pretty sure, the plot to Pixar's Elemental coming out this summer.
Yeah, but like, because I was talking to people on the Discord a bit, like, because I was pitching alongside the same thing with like metal and glass, where you're not quite sure how all of it would work. Like, I was pitching like plastic, because I definitely think plastic would be an element.
Oh, so yeah,
what do plastic elementals do?
Yeah,
because that's the one that's even newer than metal. Like, if metal's replacing wood in 500 years, practitioners are going to be dealing with plastic replacing metal, I think.
Yes, I think so, or at least it coming up as well.
Yeah. There'll be a fun trio of what do you call them? Fucking construct elements. Although concrete's probably anyway.
I don't know. Concrete's big enough, but maybe.
Well, true.
I think plastic is like on the consciousness in a way that concrete isn't. You know.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Like it's not about how much of it there is. It's about how much people think about it. You know what I mean? Like. And I think people think about plastic more than they think about concrete.
I mean, but that's just how often it would come up. Whereas I think just to be an element, it's sort of like, do I think of it as like a thing that stuff is made from, or is like a core part of the universe? And I feel like concrete meets that. It's just, there'd be less concrete storms than plastic storms, sure. There's probably not many of either.
Yeah. Anyway, good discussion question answers, everybody. A lot of cool storm ideas. I was also thinking we also
about, had I wanted to call it Dusk Bassett was the only one who mentioned just straight up
electricity. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
Which is like the simple but solid answer. Like you can't argue with electricity being the coolest elementals.
Electric elementals would be very cool for sure.
Yeah.
Were you just thinking about? I went and watched the trailer for Elemental before we recorded this, just to see if there are any good ideas or jokes that they made that we could talk about, but there weren't. It looks really bad. And so our discussion question for next week is anyone excited for this movie? I don't understand. Like, it looks terrible.
I watched the trailer a few months ago, or God, maybe it was more recent than that. But yeah, I just remember thinking, this doesn't look interesting to me at all.
Yeah.
Like, have I finally outgrown Pixar films? Maybe.
Because I remember there was that old meme about Pixar movies where it was like, first Pixar movie, what if fish had feelings? Next Pixar movie, what if toys had feelings? And then it ended with, what if feelings had feelings? And that was Inside Out. Is that what it's called?
Inside Out, yeah.
And so that was a pretty good joke when Inside Out came out. But now every Pixar movie that comes out, I feel like, okay, now it's just, what if it was an allegory for racism, but it's with elements? Or, Zootopia was, okay, what if it's an allegory for racism, but with animals? And it's like, we get it. Like, we don't need to... We don't need to do this again. It looks so boring.
I mean, this is what Disney buying you does, I think.
Yeah.
After all, I mean, I think I've skipped the last like 4 or 5. Like Soul was another one that I think they had that came out recently.
Soul was a good movie. It didn't look good, but it was quite good, I think.
Yeah. Was Coco them as well?
Coco, yes. That was also excellent.
I didn't like that.
You didn't like Coco?
No.
Do you not have a heart, Elliot? Before. What's wrong with you?
I think that was part of it. I just didn't care about the family stuff. Anyway, I'm sure. To me,
Coco was like what? Before. Coco is like Encanto, but good. That's my hot take.
No, see, Encanto's the good one.
No, Coco it's definitely boring. Not. Coco is way better than Encanto.
There is no way you are saying to me that Coco is better than Encanto. Did you watch the movies?
Do you know that bit in Encanto where the grandmother is horrible the whole way through and then that's not resolved at all? They're like, oh, it's great. It's okay. Let's all hug. Yeah. And then nothing happens. It's the worst.
Yeah, the same thing happens in Coco.
No, in Coco, you actually get a resolution where people admit that they were wrong, learn from it, and reunite. It's like, Coco is just good Encanto.
I remember because Encanto, it was like, Encanto came out at like the same time as Turning Red. Yeah. And Turning Red has the same...
Turning Red is the better of both of them, I think, probably.
No, I agree, but Turning Red has the same thing as Encanto, where it's just like the old like mom or grandma or whatever who was like, because of just suddenly kind of turns around in a way that didn't feel genuine to me. Like they just sort of were like, oh, I accept the children and the change in the world now. It was like, that was too easy. I didn't believe it either time. Anyway. But I mean, Encanto, I'm not going to pretend it's the perfect movie, but it was better than Coco. Coco's
just
boring.
Not. I'm sorry. It's just not.
Anyway, discussion question.
Who's correct?
We do have a discussion question, which is, in the future, Kenneth has beat Charles and is opening their own magic school. What does that school look like?
Yes.
Basically, a bit of a creative writing prompt. Tell us how you think they're going to build this new third color heron, the heron of many colors.
Yeah. Which heron will it be? I think this is a fun discussion question. We had a prediction in the thread that was in our Pale Predictor sheet that was kind of touching on this idea a little bit as well. I think it's just ripe for these kind of soft fan fiction questions.
Yeah.
Like, what's it going to be like? I think it was the Tithys who talks about Soot Sleeves' school.
Yes.
But right, I think it's a very fun idea for what would the Kenneth Heron Institute actually look like? Give us your discussion question thoughts on that.
So, I'm just thinking, because it was called the Blue Heron Institute because like they all got together and killed the blue heron to form it, right? So maybe the Kennet one is called like the Mossa, Alexander Bristow, and Charles School of Magic.
Institute. Yeah. I mean, I'd call it like, the Mooncrack School of Magic or something. You know what I mean? Like, lean into something cool.
Oh yeah, no. You obviously Alexander's cool school for kids, but actually this time
the Alexander Bellingsham Memorial High School. Yeah. So yeah, leave your answers in the discussion thread. You can find the links to that in the show notes down below, which is also where you can find the link to the Power Predictor form where you can leave your predictions.
Yes, don't forget to check out our Twitter at Pale Reflect Cast. That's where we post our memes every day.
Daily, hot and fresh daily memes, like fresh Cinnabon coming out of the oven. So head over there and check them out. If you want to check out,
are you reading my brain? Because I was just thinking, as you were talking, I'm like, I'm hungry. I'm going to go make some Cinnabon after, eat some Cinnabon up after. Like, you pulled that straight out of my brain.
Straight out of your brain. I know you, Elliot. I know what's in your brain.
Well, we both just found out we've independently started rewatching Schitt's Creek in the last week as well. I'm freaking out.
Yeah. Schitt's Creek, good show.
It is.
Small town shows, they're pretty fun. Who would have knew? Anyway, head over to duffmedia.com if you want more great shows from the Duff Media Network. You can check out the Duffcast. You can check out Pale in Comparison. You can check out all the great shows there, as well as Secret Page where you get access to games, news, reviews.
Is it that time of year again already? There's a time for that joke again already. I guess it is June already.
It's endlessly funny to me.
But I love how you let it sit for a while. You gotta, you don't overuse it. You let it, saute for a bit.
Anyway.
Don't forget to check out our Patreon as well, patreon.com/doofmedia. We wouldn't be able to make these great jokes without that Patreon keeping the network alive.
Yep. And you can also, while you're on Patreon, of course, head to Wildbow's Patreon and support Wildbow, because if you don't support him, every dollar you don't donate to him is a bullet that will go into the backs of your favorite characters. So make sure you go and support Wildbow so that, Florin Pesh doesn't get shot, or Otis the bus driver, or any of these great characters that we know and love.
Yeah. But also, you do our Patreon too, because then if Wildbow does stab us in the back, remember we'll be using those funds to fund
those
our
funds will go
story.
Straight into commissioning fan art where Lucy and Verona and Avery live happily ever after,
and team up with Luz to fight Belos, who's possessing Mossa.
It's going to be Carmine Belos, maybe, or This is a really good idea. I'm gonna sign up a new AO3 account right now. All right, well, bye everybody.
See everyone.